Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you with part 2 of my conversation with Patricia Lokwa Servant. She is a program strategist, storyteller, and cultural organizer born in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In case you missed that in the first episode, go back. There's so much more to catch in that episode as well, so be sure to go back. She's also the founder of CongoLove.org, the co-founder of the Andre Blouin Cultural Center in Kinshasa, and a development consultant with Friends of Congo. Her work centers African knowledge, community resilience, and youth leadership across the continent and global diaspora. For more than a decade, she's designed and led multi-country initiatives that strengthen institutions, expand equity, and build pathways for collective empowerment. She supported regional movements with Africans Rising, helped shape global narrative and educational ecosystems with Farafina, the Black Link, and advanced gender-responsive learning programs with the African Women's Development Fund. She currently serves as fundraising and partnerships lead for SOS Herman Minor International College in Ghana, where she strengthens donor systems and cultivates cross-border collaborations with aims of supporting young African students. She's also the former host of the radio show Congo Live, where she amplified stories of Congolese culture, history, and global engagement. You're going to hear so much about all of these and get the full flavor of Patricia's experience in her life in this part 2 of our conversation. And again, if you did not catch part 1, please do go back. It's a very, very interesting and insightful conversation. So let's pick up with Patricia's Why the Where and Farafina, the Black Link.
So I want to talk about Farafina, but before then, I want to ask you, where does Ghana play in? How did you get here? Why the where? How did you come to be living, working, and playing here in Accra?
There's a name that I mentioned that I started working with, a person named Kambale Musavuli. Today is my husband.
Okay.
But he has always worked around the world, specifically on the African continent. He was given the opportunity to come do some work that's sensitive in Ghana. And so he relocated here. He was in South Africa, eventually relocated here. And so initially I was just visiting, but I'm a Pan-African at the end of the day. So home to me is anywhere where my people are.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you're Congolese or not, we're one. So I loved it. It reminded me of the old Congo, because right now Congo is not the same Congo as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it to be a place that was stable, and that a lot of work can really happen here because it's accessible to the USA.
Yes.
There was a whole, a lot of people are coming here from all parts of the world because it's like, you talked about Dirty December. So for me, it was it's an opportunity for me to learn because I felt like there was so much rich culture here. And Kwame Nkrumah did such an amazing job. When you go on the streets, they have Kinshasa Avenue, Patrice Lumumba Avenue. Mm-hmm. So everywhere you go, there's Africa around you. Even when I went to the botanical gardens at the Uburi, there's a whole story behind every tree. And that just blew me away. I was like, even the trees have a story to tell, So I felt like I needed to spend time here. We loved it. And he lives here with our smallest son permanently. I have 2 older kids that they're in the USA, they're in high school, so they wanted to finish there. So that's kind of why I do the back and forth.
Sure.
But more importantly, Ghana to me is home. Yeah. I can't imagine myself anywhere else but in Ghana at this point in my life, because it makes sense with what we're building just globally. And when you're watching what's going on, much more can happen here in this space. When you see a lot of African Americans have relocated here, a lot of Africans kind of come here. And then also things are just a lot easier to move here than in the Congo. So I think that's why Ghana made sense for the moment now.
So you talk about making sense, and I always like to ask as well about your Glocal speak. So this is a word, a phrase, or a saying that's a meaningful part of your local experience, and why or how you come to value it as Glocal speak.
Well, Ghana is just Akwaba. Okay. That's welcome. I mean, Congo, I speak Lingala. That's my first language. It's not English.
Yes.
So just speaking the language makes a difference, right? Yes, I'm biracial. A good example I'll give is one time I went to go catch a taxi with my mom. And she was like, go stand over there. If they see you, they're going to charge us high. I was like, Mom, I look just like you.
You do. I
I look just like you, Mom. So I'm standing there in the corner. Obviously, the guy knows I'm her daughter. So, and I'm like, what, 11 years old at this time? Because we had visited her for a little bit. And why else would an 11-year-old biracial kid in the middle of Congo be standing there and you're the only person that looks like her? So she's sitting there negotiating with this person. Like, no, I'm not paying this much. She was like, let's say it was supposed to be $5. He was charging like $30. I just got so frustrated. I was like, Mama, tika, so kyo pesi biso okay na yo, tuzana bezo na yo te. And the guy goes, you're one of us. Get inside. You should have spoke all along. You're one of us. So just by me speaking the language, the price dropped back to $5. And my mom was like, I was trying to tell you. He's like, she's one of us. She speaks like us. But my journey has been that it was like trying to hide me so we don't get overcharged for things. Whereas by me speaking the language, it was really my door to my people, So for Ghana, even though I don't speak Twi, I don't speak Ga, the nuances, if I know the circumstance of what's going on, I can know what they're saying. Because in our language, it's about body movements, paying attention to what's happening, and you can make the connections. It's like timing of when people laughing. So even though I might not understand, I know exactly what they're talking about because it's universal. The Black language is universal. When something crazy is going on, we all look at each other. The eyes speak. Yes. A smile speaks. Body gesture speaks. So even though the language, I may not have picked up on it, maybe I'm a little too old to pick up a new language, and it's never really, I'm not a language person.
What's your son?
He speaks Twi.
Yes.
Because he was in the car and he was crying. And I was like, Manu, what is it that you want? And the driver's laughing. I was like, what is it? He's like, he's telling you he doesn't want it. I said, how do you know? He's like, he's speaking Twi. I said, I thought he was speaking baby. I don't know if it's Twi or baby. I just thought he was frustrated. So through your kids, you can learn.
Yeah.
But for me, language is just one form of communication. Yes. But although I may not speak the local language here in Ghana, I'm able still to understand what goes on just because I'm able to see other aspects of language.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Okay, so let's talk about Africa Rising and this Farafina project because it sounds amazing. And I think I've been saying this on the podcast very often about my new initiative, which is this Pan-African Creative Trust Fund. And it is about information and educational content. And I think it feeds well into the topic of what you're doing with the Farafina project. So tell us about that.
So Africa Rising was around the same time as Friends of the Congo. Mm-hmm. I had gone out to eat with a woman, amazing woman. If you have the time, research her, Amira Woods. I had an opportunity to sit with her. She just does great work. And she took me under her wings. And Africans Rising was in the process of being built. So they had an interim working group. So I didn't know much, but I was in every call that they had for a whole year, just listening. And so when they launched in Gorée Island. And I ended up going where they had Frantz Fanon's daughter that was there and all these different. It was in 2000 and either 15 or 16. But they do conferences until now. So you probably.
On Gorée, yes.
Yeah. Not just Gorée. They've done one in Tanzania and other places. But I started there from wanting to learn space. And then I was volunteering. A lot of this work I always did was volunteering. When they started their new team, there was a girl she was the engagement coordinator, or lead, I should say. Her name was Frida. And she's from Togo. She's a huge activist. She wasn't able to work for a specific period, so they needed somebody to just step in while I think she was on maternity leave. So I stepped in and I said, this is what I was born to do. Why not? Let's do it. And I ended up being there for a couple of years. And one of the groups that they had, a branch which was in the diaspora, was with, and I encourage people to Google these women and follow them and learn their work. Marcia Thomas from USA for Africa, Kumba Touré. She does a lot of storytelling, children's book writing. She's a huge Pan-Africanist on the continent. Nunu Kidan. She's based in LA working with immigrants, and Amira. And we've had people come and go, but we built this group where we were just talking about what is the role of the diaspora, because a lot of times when you look at struggles on the African continent, the funding is not really there. And a lot of what makes things work is really money. And that's what we try to break free from. But we started with having the US team for the diaspora, and eventually it became the Farafina, the Black Link, where it was a continuum of what they were already doing, but it was more so formalizing it and looking at how do we connect different organizations, movements, causes, and so forth in one platform. And also looking at what's currently happening in the USA became more of a need now more than ever for us to build that solidarity globally. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves back 500 years and no progress. So that's kind of how that was born. But Africans Rising, it's more of a movement of movements. It was started by Kumi Naidu. He is a he was a protester and activist with the Mandela during the whole apartheid movement. And
yeah. Awesome. So tell us more. You started telling me more about the work with the curators and the professors and the academics and what that project is looking like in the scope of the work there.
So in all of the meetings that we were having with the Farafina team, we really wanted to look at where's the gap. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to stand on the shoulders of those before us and really see where do we fit and how do we glue things together. And through that, like I said, there's almost 4 years of just meetings every month. We were able to come together and have facilitators. Hakima, I believe her name is Abbas from African Women's Development Fund. She came and kind of helped us put that together. Hope from Zimbabwe, I believe. She came and helped us put that together, where she kind of just listened to us and helped us contextualize everything. And then through that and long meetings, we came up with the whole Memories to Movements. In the process, it's like an incubation stage. Hasn't gone out there yet, so I can't share too much. But the idea generally is bringing movements, institutions, political institutions, educational spaces together, where it becomes kind of like a bibliothèque, a library of information. And for me, where I kind of found the biggest connection was with what W.E.B. Du Bois did. You know, he came to Ghana with the idea of building an encyclopedia, African continent, and he passed away. He never got to finish that. So how do we take what he started and use AI and use technology to build from that and take the knowledge that we have so little time to attain from our grandmothers, our mothers who are getting old. People are not interviewing them. People are not capturing this information. So how do we, and people who are, I don't want to say people are not, but those who are we connecting with them, with the artists? Those who are in the education spaces that are getting access to even the museums, are they connecting with those who are on the grassroots, right? So it's about making that whole connection so that we can be able to see the bigger picture and find ourselves in these spaces, whether it be through art, mathematics, science, or whatever it may be. The ultimate goal is these tools can be left behind for generations to come so that they don't have to start from zero or lose this knowledge that we have so little time to capture.
So it sounds like an archive to a large degree. And it sounds like, and this is what I think about often with what I'm working on, is that what we actually need is access to a repository of all this information that is not necessarily Google, that is not necessarily YouTube, but obviously potentially can be accessed through those mediums, but that all Africans can access, feel empowered to access, and then use that content to then create our systems and our institutions. Because I feel like that is where we are ailing to a large degree, because our education systems are based on another person's archive. Our understandings of who we are based on another person's archive and not our own. So that's what encourages me about that work. And so you've worked on a project where you actually have raised capital, right? That's something that you have had experience doing. So when you think about how we engage the diaspora from more than just the physical resource self, because you've done a really good job of that, what do you think it will take to get the cash and the capital, or and capital meaning maybe it's physical location, similar to like the house that you have? What are some of your thoughts on really translating the activist ways to the capitalist mindset that we aren't yet ready to avail ourselves from, but putting us together in our ways?
So when you mentioned capital, I know you were thinking SOS. So with the SOS, the goal is in the next 4 years to raise 40 million. And with the SOS school, for example, they only take children who are orphans or geniuses. So you have to go through a test. And all these children that have graduated, the alumni, because at first it was the orphans, but it became the orphans and the general population. who are in Ghana, who passed the test, could be a part of the school. But a lot of the alumni today are working in one of the most amazing places, NASA, MasterCard Foundation, and so forth. So what I think a lot of it has to do with educating ourselves and educating our children before they go into the work field, or that while they're in high school and middle school, and even from when they're born,
Yes.
teaching them that they have a sense of responsibility in whatever sense that means, right? Whether it is today you become somebody working in a foundation and you notice that there's certain voices and representation is not there, how do you make it intentional to find that? Whether it's, we talked about math classes, right? Jack ate 2 apples. Why can't it be Kwame ate 4 mangoes? You know, those type of spaces. So it's just being intentional. And then when you think of capital, I do feel that a lot of times it comes from the West, Europe, America, Canada. Those are the places who are really funding a lot of these projects. I think a lot of the things we need to also look at it is policies, because when these different corporations are coming into our countries using the land for whatever they want, whether it's taking minerals, whether it's building their companies, you know, how do we make sure that in these policies that money is going back to the community? So that's where activists can think a little bit further and deeper, that beyond just protest is how do we make sure protest meets policy and policy meets change. And in one of the ways that that happens is by holding your government officials accountable, but not just that, holding yourself accountable as an African or as a Black person globally, where I'm putting my money serving my community? Or am I just doing what makes me feel good, but in reality, it's not necessarily changing the circumstances of my people? So being intentional. That's one word I would just keep saying, is being intentional, and paying attention to trends. And those that are new creators, you know, those up and coming young people who know technology today, where you can be a content creator on Instagram. Like, there's ways where you can support initiatives where 1 or 2% goes a long way, because I know $1 goes a long way in Ghana than it does in the USA, for example. And connecting with each other, right? So if we take away the whole money aspect, how do we make sure that we connect with people? So if you need somebody who's going to be helping you write proposals, is there an organization out there already doing it so you don't have to pay somebody, where you guys can collaborate? And a lot of times that whole divide and conquer mentality still exists within us without us knowing it. It's like we become gatekeepers. We feel like I should be the only one that knows this information. I shouldn't overshare. Somebody's going to steal my idea, you know. And then we have to ask ourselves, are the ideas that we bring on the table, is it to serve us or is it to serve we? Is it to serve my lifestyle or is it to support my community? And if we look at it from a community standpoint, Africa is rich. And the more we come together, we won't have to ask those questions, because a lot of times that conversation is always as if Africa is poor. No, they are enriched by Africa, whether it's intellectual capacity, whether it's minerals, whether it's just the beauty of Africa. They've found a way to tap into Africa to serve their interests. But we Africans sometimes forget that in us working together, that's the only way, because we are doing it, you know, and there's people doing amazing work all across, but are we building that bridge, right?
Right.
That
The
black
knowledge,
link.
understanding it, and all
Exactly.
that, like you said. So when you think about, and I want to go back to the policy note that you made, because where I think we are separating ourselves is with political parties that don't have platforms that unify us. So what are your thoughts on, because Pan-Africanism, I feel like, was so effective in the 60s and in the independence movement, because ultimately that was a platform that all independence leaders ascribed to. And that's what was effective. And so that's what people could actually understand. This is who we are now. So now thinking about where Pan-Africanism is and how we are communicating that to young people or bringing them into a movement, how do you see us doing that in a way that they link that to their ethic, so to speak, as opposed to, oh, I'm MPP, I'm NDC, I'm this party, I'm that party, as opposed to what we understand is the foundation that is a Pan-African consciousness that would then carry us all to the next place.
And the simplest way is look at your aunties, your uncles, your cousins, who every day come to you and they ask you for help to pay for their school fees, and they ask you for money to just feed their children. every political party has that issue. Every person in every political party has a family member on the African continent. And even in the USA, where we have that family member who just wants to finish school, or we have that family member who's just struggling to get through the next day. We even have that family member who mentally is just going through the burden of figuring the world out. If we can answer that it exists in all these spaces, then we have to ask ourselves, those colonial borders that were once countries, have they become political parties now? Right? Maybe the colonial borders is, we look at it from a geographical perspective, but when you're looking at these specific political parties, me as a person who may decide I want to be in one political party versus the next, are you choosing the political party that's representing you the most, but also holding your political party accountable and saying that even though you may be the one that wins, that's still my brother? Because you could live in the same house where your husband is supporting this and you're supporting that, but you guys still live together. So that's what it really comes down to, is making sure that whoever we decide to support is there to serve the people and to respond to the people's needs, so that we have less and less of our family members and our brothers and our sisters who are struggling. Because any political party, whether it be from point A to point Z, if it's not in the service of the people, then at the end of the day, you're no different than the empire.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of how I see it. I do understand the importance of policy and political parties, because that's where really the systems that have been created where change can happen. What I would encourage is more so having more youth participation. We just saw in New York, the New York mayor, right? He just won, and he had 90,000 volunteers. He just showed it's possible, where this was going against billionaires, right? So these billionaires, they couldn't buy, with all their billions, they couldn't get 90,000 people to volunteer, right? So how do we learn from these type of wins, right? Where if the current political parties is not serving food on your table, putting your children through school, making sure that when you get sick, you can afford health care, then it's time to bring in a new fire, bring in a new engine, and let that be the youth. Let them come together and let them mobilize. And I would rather volunteer for 4 years and have an avocado a day for 4 years and know that that's going to be the last time I ever eat an avocado a day for the next 4 years until I win this election, versus struggling for your whole life, waiting for somebody to do it because they make promises.
Yeah.
And one thing that's very important is the aspect of neocolonialism continues to exist. Many of the African politicians and leaders go to Washington to be selected. It's like, how many times did Trump come to Africa during the elections when they do their campaigns? And that's how I use that as my little measuring tool, where it's, how many times during the elections was this politician in the Volta, in Ada, in Tema, or was this politician in Washington, in Belgium, and in the UK? If that's where he's spending most of his time, understand that when he's in power, he's less likely going to respond to your needs, he's going to respond to their needs. And then also, when do they show up? It's usually campaign year.
Exactly.
Because right after campaign year, what happens? You don't see them. And then for a year just before that, momentum starts coming up. They start fixing a road. They start buying people bags of rice. They fill your stomach, and you forget that you're not there to just fill your stomach. You're there for systematic change, where when you leave this world, your child, your grandchildren have to suffer one less degree than you did because you did what you needed to do.
Right.
In holding these government officials accountable. That's kind of my measuring tool. Yeah. I'm sure people can pull out all kinds of graphs and so forth on how they measure it. And at the end of the day, if people aren't eating, nobody wants to hear what you have to say. We couldn't do this conversation if we hadn't eaten in 5 days. We would have been sitting here listening and talking, but we would have been hungry and not productive. So that's kind of how I see it is any politician that's not responding to the basic needs of the people needs to be questioned and held accountable once they're in power. And one thing I always say is, and this is for the people who are in politics, Africa is not looking to create every African to become a billionaire. People just want to be able to afford their lives. Yes. And not have to work. I found out a security that was working in one of the buildings that I know was making 600 CDs a month, and he works from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and he's making about $60 a month.
Yeah.
Well, how is that different from slavery and exploitation? And this is coming from our own people. So that's why I talk about even neocolonialism, right? Is recognizing that it continues to exist and it's at full force.
Yeah.
And that it's going to take the people in the grassroots to look at them face to face and say, this is enough. Because believe it or not, they're preparing the next generation of their children, of people that they trust that are going to take power to continue what they've...
That.
Exactly. And what we need to remember is it's not going to happen. And we talked about this earlier, kind of going full circle. God has already given us the ability to think, the ability to act. And all we have to do now is show up. And a lot of times we don't show up, and we only show up in certain times.
That's the story. Yeah. Yeah. So ultimately it's a value system. You know, it's digging in there.
What do you put value in?
Yeah. And so I want to ask you something I ask all of my guests, and it's about a mindset hack. What do you do to flip the switch, to get in the zone? What is your mindset hack?
It's interesting because, it's how do I not do the work? That's usually the challenge for me, because I dream this, I breathe this.
Yeah.
Everything that I do, I remember my son, when he was really small, he was in the States. They were like, what country do we live in? They were like, Congo. Like, that gives you a sense of how much I do at home over the Congo.
Yeah.
The kids actually thought they lived in the Congo. That they went and told the school, this is Congo. So for me, it's, I think, the opposite.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is I feel like everybody was born for something, right? Beyonce was born to sing. That's her thing. Yeah. Bill Gates is creating computers, For me, it's this. Mm-hmm. So it's not that I need to hack into something. I get inspired by these spaces. So I love even having these conversations. It doesn't have to be, because this is not a conversation I have just because we're doing this. We were having this conversation when I first met you. Yeah. Every time we talk, we somehow end up back in the same conversation over and over. So for me, it's what I think the best thing I could say for people who are in the same space as me, who do this every day, is what does self-care look like? Yeah. Because you can do this so much and you get burnt out really easy, especially when things are moving so slow to see the change. So self-care is important. And self-care for me is, I love listening to music with no words. Mm-hmm. So music from Mali, jazz, blues. Yeah. The sounds is really what helps me dream bigger. Yeah. Because sometimes when you're in spaces where there's so much talking, so much promises, so much conversation, you just need that silence. And sitting at the beach and just hearing the trees, being one with nature and being one with instruments, to me, that's where I found most inspiration. Like when I'm doing some of my work, I'll have certain songs just playing, like Lucky Dubé, when he's playing, I'm just like, yeah, we're going back to our roots. This is what we're doing. And that's where I hack into it, is by listening to artistic forms of expression to touch into a part of my brain that's more technical so that it can become more creative. And I find a lot of my creativity when I'm in those spaces. Or even going to, Ghana has a lot of amazing museums. So right now I'm going to school for humanities, but I'm specifically doing women and visual arts. Oh. So images stand out to me. I'm a very, even when I do my grassroots planning, I don't write, I draw. So when somebody is telling me we're going to have a movement, this is going to be the core. Okay, this is the core. There's going to be these people, triangle. I see things in shapes. And a lot of times that's not really talked about a lot. And then also the most important is my spiritual sense of what my mother instilled in me at a very, very, very young age. She planted seeds in me that made me understand that I was a powerful being, that God made no mistake of bringing me into this world, and I'm going to do amazing things. Before she passed away, it was 2 weeks before she passed away, she told me, Patricia, you're going to sit in front of kings and queens and they're going to listen to you. And I was like, Mom, what kings and queens are you talking about? She was like, you don't know, what God has put in you. And he said, there's a whole Bible verse, like before you were born, God knew what he created you for. And I really my mother was very religious. Everything she did was religious. And I didn't understand it until she passed away, because 8 months after she passed away, we had a Zoom call with Kumba and Princess Esmeralda, which is the the sister of the King of Belgium. And I was having this whole conversation.
Sure.
And it wasn't supposed to be me, in my mind. And I was like, oh, no, I'll find somebody. But he was like, no, it's going to be you. And so I feel like women, mothers, speak power into your children. When you are yelling at that child and telling him, are you stupid? You don't know what you're doing. Why did you do that? You should know better because you just want to conform to society, right? And I learned that because I asked this question once to, why is it when you go to the States, you see African Americans mostly, they yell at their kids. You need to do this. And he said, you have to understand the historical context of where it comes from. Because when they were out on the cotton field, the master would beat the child to the point they would beat him. The child would die. So what would the mother do? Would intervene and show the master, I've already taken care of it. You're beating your child with love because you don't want the master to beat him because he's going to kill your child. So your child grows up, but nobody ever took the time to explain to that child why it was done. So now you as adults, as you're raising your children, you're just like, this is how my mama did it. I'm going to beat, I'm going to beat you for this, or you didn't do this. But why? Is that the only way? I do understand that, sometimes tough love is important. But there's ways where we can communicate to our children to empower them. And my mother, I can't remember a moment she ever hit me. I was a stubborn kid, and I am still stubborn now. But what I do remember is prayer was always central in our home. But the kind of prayer we did was not a prayer of asking, but more of a prayer of thanking God for what he's done, acknowledging that what we have is enough and what we've been given is what is ours, and we don't have to compare myself to my brother, to my sister. I learned that as I've gotten, but I can't explain the importance of those seeds because it's in the back, even when you look at it from a psychological perspective, when you study psychology, people who are in that space. I did elementary school education. They talk about the first 5 years of a child's life determines how they make decisions. So I'm 41 today, and between what I like and what I don't like, what I think is right and what is not right, there's something that was planted in me that it's programmed, right? And every time I look back, I always remember, like when I started Congo Love, I was like, Mom, I really want to do this. She was like, I'm going to pray about it. You should do it. I think, it's right. And then other people, I'm not going to say anybody, but my dad, he was like, why don't you just work for the UN? I was like, Dad, why can't we be the UN?
Yes.
Why can't Congo Love send out planes to other countries when there's Ebola crises? Because we're the best at what we do. Why do I have to go work for them? Why can't I build my own? So those things, and if I didn't have that resilience in me, I wouldn't have done it.
Right. Yeah.
Because so many people were like, you're doing Congo Live for 1 year, you're not even getting paid. When are we going to eat at least, a sandwich from this money? And I was volunteering because I'm like, these people that are working with me get paid to speak in spaces, and I'm volunteering and they're doing this for free, and you want me to go ask them to pay me?
Right.
No, I have to make my level of sacrifices to meet them where they are so that I can be able to earn my space.
Right.
And that's when it becomes the older generation's responsibility to bring that youth in and not have to charge them. You talked about capital. Sometimes it's like, when you leave this world, you're not going to get buried with your bank account, right? And the knowledge that you have, you spend 60 years of attaining this knowledge, and then you're just going to die with it and it's gone. Make sure that you're leaving that behind. So that's kind of how I see it, it's from that perspective of it's so, so important how we raise our kids. Love, absolutely. Understanding the dimensions of what makes us humans, spiritual sense, physical sense, and every sense, amazing. But the best gift you can give your child is words of empowerment. Mm-hmm. And speaking life into them like no other. So that when they see something that doesn't look familiar and that doesn't look healthy, they automatically know that this is not love. They automatically know that this is not for me. They will be allergic to it. Mm-hmm. They will be allergic to it because they say, right, 9 times out of 10, if you come from an alcoholic home, you end up in an alcoholic relationship, right? But how can it be 9 times out of 10 if you end up in a Pan-African home, you're going to be a Pan-African changing your country? Mm-hmm. That's how I see it. Yeah. So we could switch it, right? So, and then we want to look at from that perspective, if that 1% does exist, be that 1%. Right. Where if you came from a background where a lot of these things were not taught to you, mm-hmm. be intentional, have discernment, be someone who listens more and speak less. I am the youngest person in the groups that I work in. Outside of Africans Rising and all of the spaces that I work, I am the youngest person. And I take pride in that. because I feel like there's so much knowledge and it's been years and I continue to attain this knowledge because I know there's going to be a time when my time would be to pass on that knowledge. And I have a sense of responsibility. We call them a griot. You know, people call me that. I was actually called that 2 days ago. They're like, you're like a griot. I was like, I guess, yeah, you can call it that. But it's like, be a griot in your generation. Activism is not just going to the grassroots policies. Activism can be from home. Yes. Where go to your grandmother and speak to her and write these things down. Go to your mother and say, Mom, what were the things what were your wins? What were the challenges? Write these things down. Because with the way technology is going, these stories are going to be easier and easier to be able to upload. It won't just be a piece of paper at home. It's going to be on a cloud somewhere. But most importantly, plant seeds of empowerment, plant seeds of just courage, plant seeds of just God is doing amazing things in your life. And it's only a matter of time. And the aspect of discernment is pay attention to the signs. Because you will start noticing, and the signs is not, I woke up and I asked for $1,000 and I got $1,000. No, the signs is you taking a picture and noticing that your favorite color is red and you didn't pay attention that when you looked at that picture, there was red roses behind you the whole time. And that's God's way of telling you, I'm present. So those are the ways I see signs, or me having a conversation with you and somebody Googling our conversation and 2-3 other people in the world have the same conversation or having the same train of thoughts. Those are the signs that God is aligned with what you're doing. And the more he's aligned with what you're doing, the more it feels organic and natural because you just start meeting people. Because that's what happened to me. It was like I was the only one and then I became the youngest one.
Right.
you know?
Right.
Yeah. But it took me having the courage to say that, the life that I'm living in, this is really, really something I stand by. How do I want to be remembered? Not now, 500 years from now. And I'll ask you this question. Do you remember your uncle's name from 500 years from now? An auntie?
Not actual.
1,000.
Yeah.
1,000 years from now. Do you know their name? But we know Cleopatra. We know King Leopold. We know these things. So how will your name be remembered and mark history? Not just in this generation, but from generations to come. And that's kind of like my guiding light, which gives us, sometimes you're like, where do you get this fire? I'm like, because I'm not doing it for one generation. I'm doing it for generations. And generations means there's going to be fight. And if you're not being attacked, then you ain't doing it right. That's how I've learned. If they ain't fighting you ain't doing it right. Because when you start touching on those points that are sensitive, that's when the attacks come. And even in the Bible, it says it, right? Where there's light, you're always going to be attacked. Like if you look at even the story of Jesus, and if you follow that story, for those who are religious and Christians, here's a person who never sinned, never did anything wrong, was the Son of God, but was crucified. And you think, and my mother would tell me, and you think with the sins that you bear, that you won't be crucified for wanting to do, this comes with the territory. And take any story. Any person who's ever made substantial change was fought. And Africa is just a matter of time. Right now, Africa is going through a battle. And I always say Congo is the heart of Africa. It's having a heart attack. And until we take care of that heart attack, the rest of the African continent is going to continue to struggle.
Yes.
So for me, is even for the diaspora, we have a responsibility of where we come from. Every other group does it. And what we don't understand is if we're not doing it, it's not because we don't care. It's because the systems have been created for us not to want to do it, to see the differences versus the similarities, right? And if a best example is just look at how the African continent was divided. Why didn't they just take all the English-speaking countries and put them in one court? And all the French-speaking? They made sure it was English, French, so that we can never connect, we can never mobilize. The same thing if you even look at in the USA, when you look at struggles, where you could look at 4 different African-American struggles, but they're fighting against each other. They're not working together. They're working in different spaces. And they're not really coming together to work about change. And the ones that do work together, they're the ones that move furthest ahead. Black Lives Matter being a great example of when they came together, they were able to see it became global. It was no longer about just the USA. So
that's a heavy hack. So you started to touch on some of the things that you do when you're not working, but it sounds like you're working a lot. But tell us a little bit about who you are when you're not on the clock. Are you a reader or watcher? You said you're a listener, but what are some of your favorite reads or watches in addition to your?
Who I am outside of work? That's a really good question. I asked my husband that question. I said, when do you take a break? He said, during funerals. And I remember 10 years ago, I said, this guy is crazy. And I find myself
The same.
in the same space. I think it's something I need to work on because I always feel like I have such a short amount of time in this world and there's such a great need. And especially being from the Congo, initially it was really bad because it affected me mentally. I became depressed. I remember going to the doctor's office and they're like, when's the last time there was a death in your family? I'm like, death every day in the Congo. There was a massacre that just happened yesterday. And he was looking at me like, and you're functioning and I'm seeing these images and you're working. It's in solitude. I used to be somebody who was out more, going out more. And then when I saw the burdens of the world that put upon us, it made me kind of step back and be more intentional of the spaces that I'm in, because I feel like sometimes it's wasted time if I'm in the wrong spaces. I'm just hanging there and it's just like, I can't sit here. It's not that, I don't, that's the thing is I don't see it as work. It's like somebody who cooks, like, you're working again. I love cooking. I love tasting these things. So for me, when I'm having even this conversation with you, this is like, it's helping me even tap into myself based on the questions you're asking me. Like, when I leave the space, I'm going to reflect. Because a lot of times when I leave spaces is when I have my thinking. What did that mean when I said that? How are you going to hold yourself accountable in the words you just said? Because people are going to start watching, right? And they're going to go research and say, well, she did this, but, you did hear what she did last week? She was saying all this on the radio. So it's like you have to be self-aware of how you move in spaces, specifically when God puts you in a space of leadership. You have to be very aware of your flaws. We all have things we need to work on, and what are the things that you're working on helping what you're trying to do, or is it pulling you back and you're losing that trust that you build in those communities? So I'm constantly in myself about having those conversations. So usually when I'm in silent spaces, I'm able to hear better. Funny enough, I can hear conversations better when the noise is not distracting me. So that's what I do, is just silence.
Yeah. I hear you. Patricia, this has been awesome. I'm so happy we got together. I'm so happy we made the time.
Next time I have to interview you.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be doing the Beneath the Baobab.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
And if anybody who wants to support the work that I do, there's a congolove.org.
Yep.
You can donate. You can volunteer. And I forgot to mention, last year I actually registered a company with Thalia Mavros, who she's done a couple of interviews on, pieces on Netflix. And with Kambale, it's called Bilili Lab, which will be coming out soon, where we're going to be working with filmmakers, because she's a filmmaker from Hollywood, where we want to look at bringing equipment that are no longer being used back here. And then we'll be taking 6 fellows through a journey of following the Witches of the North, their story told by them, following a woman coming from the rural areas, moving to Ghana, that journey, following a woman in the market space, following a student. There's 6 stories, and it'll be a female and a male, where we'll first go through master classes, teaching them, working with people in Hollywood, doing these master classes, and eventually implementing it and having them going through this pilot project where we'll create a 1-hour documentary of these different stories, but us telling our own stories and bringing the best equipments to give them access to be able to tell these stories. So training storytellers to be able to tell our stories. So those are some areas where people can support. Is Bilili Lab. Follow Congo Love on Facebook. Kambale Musavuli, he's a huge activist. All the names that I've mentioned throughout this conversation, and there's so many more. But you'll notice that when you follow these people, they mention also names of people who mentor them and inspire them. So keep writing those names down. Keep their names alive when you're having conversations with family. Tell the stories that you've just learned, and be, again, intentional about, if you're a leader in a space and you don't see a woman, be intentional of bringing one in, because a lot of times the way that the systems have been created, we're always the last option. Make us the first option, and you'll find that things move actually quicker. And they move in a way that's meaningful because we carry the world in our shoulders, right? And if we're able to have all these tools, we can do it in a better way. So just support initiatives. And even if it's not ours, just volunteer. I started volunteering,
Yes.
and I'm getting my degree in 2 weeks.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And I'm so excited about that
There
and
you
the next journey in
go.
my life. I have a fellowship that I'm about to start. So join fellowships, cohorts, create them yourselves. There's so many creative ways now that you could just do things. And it doesn't have to be formal. That you can collaborate with institutions. And if you have a skill, give it to the institution. It doesn't have to be just funding. If you could be a great artist, you could be a great storyteller, you could be a great mathematician, you could whatever. Bring your skill to the table, and there's a person out there that needs you and that needs your voice. So bring it to the table.
I love it. I love it. And as Patricia mentioned, all of those names, you all know the show notes are always very rich. So these will all be in the show notes. You'll have a whole resource of all those things put down. And yes, get involved, folks. Get involved. That's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at localcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Please like, share, subscribe, leave us a review. Check out the show notes. They're going to be awesome and they're going to help move this story along. And let's all be invested. It's all about Pan-African progress.
And I'm going to add something.
Yes.
Send you questions.
Yes.
Email questions to you for the next artist. So these are the kind of questions. Can you ask more of these questions? Can you dig deeper?
Yeah.
I think that will be.
Yeah.
Then that way the people can also feel like they're part of the
Engage.
conversation.
Yes,
and then
I
you
love
can name
it.
their name and say, you had a question from this person coming up.
That's your radio training.
There you go.
I love it. All right. You heard it. Send us questions. We want to know. We want to keep on this train of engaging and telling stories and being the solutions. Until next time, bye for now.